Hello and welcome to the 4th Diablo 3 Hot Topics podcast. Today we will be covering 1. The president and co-founder of Blizzard posts a letter to Diablo 3 players. 2. A wizard invulnerability exploit has been hotfixed. 3. Players suggest positive monster affixes. 4. Gold prices continue to drop in the Diablo economy. 5. How the auction house affects drop rates that you can use. 6. My opinion on the state of the action MMO genre. In hardcore news, topic number 1 will be Hardcore Auction House is still going strong. 2. Two forum posts that are very useful to hardcore players. And 3. My opinion on the current state of hardcore. Topic number 1. President and co-founder of Blizzard composes a letter 2 months after Diablo 3's release. Here are the highlights to the letter. Mike starts off mentioning that Diablo's 3 launch was a resounding success, but Blizzard underestimated the number of players that were going to be playing at launch. This caused many errors and delays for an online-only video game. Mike then goes on to talk about how every voice matters, meaning that they take all feedback seriously. Blizzard never takes that for granted. This is an obvious PR statement, so read in between the lines and come up with your own conclusion. He then moves on to talk about the upcoming improvements to the game, and finally wraps up mentioning that the real money auction house should not feel mandatory and that online video games will be the future. Topic number 2. Wizard invulnerability exploit hotfixed. A user posted instructions on how to use Teleport and Archon to make themselves invulnerable. Blizzard was quick to roll out a hotfix, but apparently this has been in the game since launch. How much this exploit has been used is unknown, and I'm sure Blizzard is probably not going to release any more information about this subject. Topic number 3. Players suggest positive monster affixes. Right now, when we think of affixes, we think of them in a negative light. That's because they make champion and elite bombs much stronger. What players are suggesting now is to have affixes that reward you for defeating champion and elite mobs. Affixes such as Hoarder, which will guarantee a level 63 item drop, or Rich, which will guarantee 10 times more gold will drop. This is a great idea for 2 reasons. 1. It will be a positive PR move for Blizzard. It will show that they are listening to the community and that their feedback really matters. Let's face it, there's a lot of negativity going on in the forums right now. Anything positive would be a good thing. 2. They can put these positive affixes in places where players rarely ever go. The links to the post is listed below. Topic number 4. Gold prices continue to drop. As of this recording, 1 million gold is going for about $1.55. This is a good indicator that supply is outweighing demand. Sellers on the real money auction house is also reporting having to reduce prices on items across the board. It seems the market has reached its saturation points. All the players that are willing to spend top dollar have what they want, and no new players are taking their place. For a normal player, this is a very good thing, as items and gold will continue to drop in price. For farmers and botters, it means that they will continue to yell for new content so that the current players will stay and continue to buy new items. Topic number 5. A discussion on how the auction house affects item drops that you can use for your character. There is an interesting post discussing on how the auction house affects your upgrade progression. In Diablo, there is an upward trending line for upgrading your gear. So let's say at level 30, in order to get your upgrade, it'll take you 1 hour worth of farming. But if you use the auction house, you will jump ahead of the curve on that line. So now your next upgrade isn't once every hour, but it's once every 3 hours. And this basically becomes a snowball effect in which you keep buying from the auction house, and the estimated time in which you can find an upgrade from killing a monster keeps getting further and further away. This makes a lot of sense when you think about it. So when you buy an item from the auction house, you're basically buying the 90th percentile or the top range for your level. So finding a top range item for your level when you're playing is very unlikely. It's basically a vicious cycle in which once you start buying from the auction house, it's hard to actually stop buying from the auction house. Topic number 6. My opinion on the state of the action MMO. Right now, Diablo 3 is the king of the action MMO, but that's going to change pretty soon. Both Torchlight 2 and Path of the Exile are slated to come out this year or early next year. And being the first to market obviously has its advantages in which you can grab the user base. Unfortunately, there's a lot of users that seem to be very unhappy with Diablo 3 right now. And both Torchlight 2 and Path of the Exile will have time to play Diablo 3 and also add in content where it's lacking in Diablo 3 right now. So it's going to be very interesting to see if players are willing to jump to Torchlight 2 or Path of the Exile. So what Diablo 3 needs right now is a lot of content patches to come out before either of those games gets released. Plus, you also have to factor in that there are other MMOs that are going to come out that's going to take players away from Diablo 3. Things like Mists of the Pandaria and Guild Wars 2 have been touted as the next coming of the big MMO. So, it remains to be seen if Diablo 3 can survive the onslaught of all these new games. Moving on to hardcore news, topic number 1, hardcore auction house is still going strong. And there's really a lot of reasons for this. Number 1, players are dying and losing their gear, so supply is not always upward trending like it is in softcore. And number 2, there are just a lot less farmers and botters in hardcore because the community is so much smaller and there are so fewer people buying stuff from the auction house. So the question is there going to be more softcore farmers and botter coming over to hardcore as it becomes harder to make money in softcore? Gold trading between softcore and hardcore is already really popular. Is this something that's going to keep happening? Is it going to increase? It's definitely something worth keeping your eye on. Topic number 2, 2 useful forum posts for you to know about. The links are posted below in the comments. The first one is titled Hardcore Cookbook. It's a nice post about general tips, a breakdown of all monster affixes, stats on equipment, and damage reduction information that you need to know. I find the monster affix breakdown to be very useful. The second forum post is called ENRAGE Timers. This post has a list of all of the bosses and mini bosses, and if they have an ENRAGE timer. It also gives you a suggested DPS amount that your character needs to have in order to complete the fight without reaching the ENRAGE timer. It isn't a complete list yet, but it's very useful information to know. The last topic of the day is the current state of hardcore. And I'm not talking about just hardcore for Diablo 3, I'm talking about hardcore mode in general for all types of games. And I've noticed that hardcore modes have been appearing in indie games a little bit more recently, and I just found out that Path of the Exile will also have a hardcore mode. So it's kind of interesting to see that the idea of a character having a permanent death is kind of catching on, and it's appealing to some of the player base. That is not to say that I want to see hardcore in all games. Like for World of Warcraft or Guild Wars 2, I don't think it would make much sense to have a hardcore mode in those type of games. But other games, such as horror games, I think they could benefit from a hardcore mode, as long as there is some relative benefit for doing that in horror games. I don't think there's really any massively online horror game right now. Really, zombie shooters don't really count for that. I just think that developers, as they progress, they might have more interesting uses for a hardcore mode in the future. And it would be interesting to see if there is more games besides indie games that can find a way to use that type of mode to their benefit. That is it for this podcast. Thank you for listening.